paradise earth. This is what I was sold on would be happening in the future as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. If I became one, that I could live and enjoy endless life on a paradise earth. Because that was, or that is, according to the teaching, God's plan for humanity, the Father's plan, Christ's plan, that there would be a paradise earth and everyone who wasn't of the 144,000 chosen would be living on earth, restored earth, in a similar situation that Adam and Eve were living in. Now, what's interesting is that the earthly patriarchs, they teach, also thought or believed in this. Now, it's quite fascinating that they do that. In fact, even so, back in 1919 or something like that, they predicted that the patriarchs of old would be raised up in 1925 and rule on earth, because they believed the end was coming then, that they would have a place seated on earth in a earthly government ruled by heaven, because they believe that Christ started his return to earth in 1874, and then it continued on to past 1914. That's when the kingdom was established, and then the earthly princes would be raised up, or the earthly patriarchs would be raised up in 1925. In fact, I even bought a property in San Diego called Beth Sarum. You can look it up yourself and see that this was the case. So this is what Jehovah's Witnesses believed, and still believe, in fact. Now, of course, in 1925, that failed. No one was resurrected to an earth, no old patriarchs. But the property still existed. Judge Rutherford, the second president of the Watchtower, lived there in the summer in San Diego and commuted from New York to San Diego respectively because of his illness, but apparently he was sick or something like that, if you believe the narrative, and he took advantage of the property, mansion, until the day he died, and then the Watchtower Society sold it off. But that's another topic. I want to go back to this idea though, because the question really is, where is our home as believers? Is it in heaven or is it on earth? Is part of the people who are believers, like a small number, going to be in heaven ruling, and the rest of us be on earth? Or are we all going to be in heaven? What did the patriarchs believe? Did they think they were going to be on earth or in heaven? It's a good question to ask. And I came across, sometimes it's always there in plain sight until you re-examine and deconstruct your own beliefs and your own thoughts. You realize that there was a view that from the past that they didn't believe that they would be on earth. In fact, they didn't even desire to be on earth once they were blessed by the Father. And here's one case in Hebrews chapter 10, and we're going to read from 10 to 16. And we're going to see the architect of the future heavenly kingdom was God. And what did the patriarchs of old think about that, or believe in their hearts? Where did they believe their home would be, on earth or in heaven? Let's read from Hebrews 11, chapter 11, verse 10. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. By faith, Abraham, even though he was past age, and Sarah herself was barren, was enabled to become a father because he considered himself faithful who had made the promise. And so, from this one man, and he and good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and countless as the sands of the seashore. All these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance. And they admitted that they were aliens and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have the opportunity to return. But instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. Quite fascinating passage, don't you think, friends? Are we seeing here any idea that these men of old, men and women of old, thought that paradise earth was on the horizon? Some questions we can ask. Why did they refuse to go back to Mesopotamia? Look at verse 13. All these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them from and welcomed them from a distance, and they admitted that they were aliens and strangers. So they admitted this. This wasn't their home anymore. They didn't see this as their home. So they saw somewhere else as their home. We know that in verse 10, God is the architect and the builder of this heavenly home. Now, if he is the architect and builder of that home, then who built the earthly home or the earthly system that they were part of? That's another question. Well, we can say God, I guess. That's what it says in the beginning. God made the heavens and the earth. But was this home? This is the question. Is this home? But why must they remain as strangers? It was not their final destination, therefore, if they remained strangers and pilgrims until they died, earth. But they stayed this way until the future. And we see that in verse 16, right? Where it says, instead they were longing for a better country. What? So the country that they lived in wasn't good, right? It was okay, it was fine, but it wasn't a better place. Because the next line says, a heavenly one. So they were waiting for the heavenly one. So it got me thinking, like when I was reading this, JWs believe a restored paradise earth is available, ruled by a heavenly government, which these patriarchs wouldn't be part of because they weren't born again, according to their teaching. But it doesn't seem that is the case here. The writer of Hebrews is not saying, they were waiting for an earthly paradise. Not at all. So the question then I think of is, there are two things in play here. There is one where the dispensationalists believe that the Jews, Israel, will get a chance to, during the Great Tribulation, a 7-year period, get a chance to be saved. Before that happens, there would be a rapture. This is what dispensationalists believe. There would be a rapture of the believers, the church of God, into heaven, so therefore they don't face tribulation. It would be just the Jews, the Israel, and they will have an opportunity to believe in Christ and be saved, and they will remain on earth as the earthly inhabitants, and anyone else who believes, right? At that time. And the church will be in heaven, and they will come down to planet Earth according to Revelation 21. Of course, if you read further in Revelation 22, there is still the thieves and murderers on the outside of the walls of the New Jerusalem. So that is one understanding of the end times. Jehovah's Witnesses have this belief that there's a heavenly kingdom, a few choice 144,000 number. They take the Revelation number as from symbolic to make it literal. They believe those who are chosen, not anyone prior to Christ's death and resurrection, they didn't get a chance. They wouldn't have a chance to be in heaven because they weren't born again. Only those after the resurrection would be chosen as 144,000, and the rest, all those in the past prior to Christ, would be raised up, and anyone else, and those who choose to believe in God, Jehovah, and through Jesus, they can have a chance to live on earth, on the paradise, a restored paradise earth. Or all believers. This would be the alternative. All believers who believe in Christ Jesus, or in the past, faithful ones who believed in the promise, they would also become part of one flock. Gentiles and the Jews all become one flock together in heaven, where Jesus is preparing a place for everybody. The Apostle Paul said his citizenship belongs in heavens. He said that he's an ambassador on earth for Christ. And therefore we are ambassadors as new creations on earth. And our place is together with the Father, not separated from the Father. We'll be all together. So that is my understanding. Now, whatever is to be of this earth, we will eventually have a better understanding in the future. But as far as I can see, I think there is, it's like two political parties. There is the one running the earth. That's that political party that's running the earth. The evil one is in charge. 1 John 5:19, the whole world is lying in the power of the wicked one. And there's a rescue mission to save people from this prison-like system that we're in, so that we can be free and then join in the future, like our citizenship, our longing, as pilgrims as we are today here on earth. Until that time, we'll be with Christ in the heavens. But now we are free from the judgment of Yahweh to inhabitants of this planet Earth. I hope that's a little bit clear. I'm trying to make it as clear as I can. Is what I've been thinking about, that there is no, I don't see. Now I know there's promises in the Bible that the righteous will live on earth, etc. From Psalms 37:29 and Psalms 37:10 and 11, but that also is more implied to an Israelite or a Jewish person than it is to the New Covenant believers. Revelation is a little bit of a tricky book because everything in Revelation is pointing to a Jewish audience, except for a few chapters in the beginning, and there's a few, maybe one or two chapters at the end, which sort of brings in the whole world together. But I think we have to be very, very careful how we interpret Revelation. It's a unique book in itself, and so there is no direct references to the past. There's a lot of allusions, and so we have to be careful how we view this book. Personally, this is how I see it. It is a highly symbolic book, and we don't want to hang our hat on whatever Revelation says and dismiss the 26 other New Testament writers and their words, right? Because it really is a works-based book, works-based salvation coming from angels, messages coming from angels about how to be saved. When we are told by the apostles right throughout the New Testament letters that just to believe in Christ is to be saved, and yet and the Apostle Paul warns that even if an angel from heaven was to give you a gospel of whatever, don't believe in him. Well, book of Revelation is full of angels telling you what to do. So we have to be very careful, friends, about Revelation, in my opinion. In saying that, we can learn something from it all. But is this paradise earth really the emphasis? No. From the patriarchs to the new covenant writing to the apostles, it wasn't the emphasis. In fact, they all saw themselves as pilgrims. This isn't their home. So why should it be our home? Why should we push this idea that somehow this is really the focus? We should focus on the material things of this earth, because one day you'll be here. No. Doesn't seem that is the case, in my view. What are your thoughts anyway? Maybe it's a time to reflect and think about it like I did. I was just reading this a couple of weeks ago, and it just played over my mind about, about a week ago, sorry. And it just played on my mind about that Abraham was actually looking for a better place, a heavenly one. But that is thousands of years ago, right? Before the apostles and others were talking about this, and Jesus was talking about the kingdom of heavens. Anyway, it's just my thoughts for today. Take care. Hopefully it's been an interesting conversation for you. See you later.